This week's guest is one of the most recognizable faces and voices in the entire hunting and shooting industry. An author, a prolific magazine writer, TV personality, podcast host, seminar speaker, radio host, and of course, international hunter. His expertise in the pursuit of whitetail deer over his lifetime long ago earned him the well-recognized nickname, Mr. Whitetail. So by now you probably know the man I'm talking about is my friend, Larry Weishuhn. This podcast is brought to you by Remington Firearms. For more information on the new era of Remington, visit our site at remarms.com. Okay, Larry, welcome to the show. You know, you're one of the most recognized personalities in the hunting industry, hunting and shooting industry. But most folks, I should say, most folks recognize you as Mr. Whitetail. How did that come about?
Well, I appreciate the first comments. Actually, I think it's the white beard, the red neckerchief, and the brown hat that kind of...
No. That would have been Santa Claus.
That would have been, well, you know what, I played a Western Santa Claus a time or two in the past. The Mr. Whitetail thing, interestingly, occurred about in 1984 or so. I had been a wildlife biologist for quite some time, had done a lot of research with whitetail deer, everything from nutrition, antler development, all developing management techniques. And a gentleman by the name of J. Wayne Fears, who was a writer for a whole bunch of magazines at the time, came down and met him through Judd Cooney, and he came to one of the ranches, and he and I hunted together and took him on a whitetail deer hunt. We got to be really good friends, made a couple more hunts together, and then all of a sudden there was a magazine that showed up with my picture on the cover, or a picture of me on the cover, under which was written Larry Weishuhn, Mr. Whitetail. In that particular article, he spoke about some of the management things I've been involved with, some of the research I'd been involved with, and the fact that I'd been hunting all my life, and he was the one who actually came up with the Mr. Whitetail moniker.
And it stuck. What year did you say that was?
That was about
1980
1984, 1985, somewhere along through there.
So it's been a while for...
It's been a while, yes, sir.
Yeah, look, you know.
I think I finally reached that maturity.
So he came up with that name when you were like 10 years old?
Actually, I was 8, but I appreciate you giving me a little bit.
So you were a wildlife biologist.
Yes, sir.
That's really where your career started.
Yes, sir.
What led to that? How did you...
All my life, I've loved the outdoors, grew up in a hunting family, and even when people ask me, said, Larry, when'd you go on your first hunt or fishing trip? It goes beyond what memory serves me. But I did. I always wanted to be involved in the outdoor industry in some form or fashion because of the love of the outdoors and having grown up in that kind of situation. And wildlife biologist just happened to be the right direction for me to go as far as I was concerned. I was very fortunate in that while I was still an undergraduate at Texas A&M, I went to work under contract with the Department of Veterinary Pathology and Texas Parks and Wildlife Department to do wildlife disease and nutrition research. So that kind of set the stage to a lot of different things, and that was during that time frame when all this interest in whitetail deer, kind of as we've seen it develop over the years, started. It actually kind of started when a guy by the name of Jerry Smith, who was a photographer, started taking pictures of mature deer, and they started appearing in articles and on covers, and particularly in magazine articles that John Wooders wrote. And between those two, when you get right down to it, they're, without a doubt, in my mind, there are a lot of guys who have followed, and there are a lot of guys who like to take credit for the interest there is in whitetail deer, but it was those two guys that really started it. Up to that point, Lenny LaRue was the primary wildlife photographer, and the only deer that he could get pictures of were like yearling and 2-year-olds, because those were the only ones that's how long they lived.
Right.
Well, once they started getting to see pictures of what a mature deer could actually grow into, and then John started writing about mature deer, that really kind of changed. And along that same time, two biologists, dear friends of mine, Al Brothers and Murphy Ray, wrote a book called Producing Quality Whitetail. They'd seen the quality of the whitetail deer in the South Texas brush country go down, and so they started developing techniques to try to bring that herd back to where it had mature deer within that population. So that's kind of where all this started with, and that's kind of led me into, I was fortunate to be around during that time frame when all that was going on, and was involved in some of the research that those same guys were involved with through a gentleman by the name of Dr. Mick Robinson, who I worked with the Department of Veterinary Pathology.
What exactly does a wildlife biologist do?
These days, they sit there in front of a computer and model everything. But during those days, the early days, we did lots of field work. A lot of wildlife management is about 10%, maybe, no, I take that back. It's probably about 3% wildlife management and about 97% people management. And so you spend a lot of time developing the techniques, but then once you developed the technique and you saw the results of it, then it became a matter of getting the word out to people so they'd have a better understanding. And we came from a situation of years ago where nobody shot a whitetail doe, to where we had to change a lot of different policies and all those kind of things. So in those days, you spent a lot of time doing PR work, sitting on a corner somewhere and talking to an old-time rancher and trying to explain to him why it was important that does need to be taken care of and why there need to be water in this part of the pasture and those kind of things. So I spent a lot of time actual field work and very little time in offices, as people have a tendency to do these days.
How well has the message been given and received?
Actually, it's probably been given too good. No, not really. But the message finally, through a lot of different efforts and more people following, once these guys really kind of got things started, the message is out there. And now there are very few states that are not involved in some form or fashion of a quality habitat and quality wildlife management programs.
So how did a wildlife biologist become a personality in the television, writing, radio, et cetera, et cetera?
Being at the right place at the right time.
Or wrong place at the right time?
Or the wrong place at the right time, kind of situation. It actually, as I said, I was there during the initiation of all these things that we developed, and I was one of those people who did not mind getting up in front of a group or sitting on a fence post somewhere on a fence and talking to a rancher. And I was there at the right time. I loved to read, loved to write, and so I started writing. I saw my first national article in 1970, which was an article about desert bighorn sheep research that I was involved in, and that also was my first cover as far as a magazine cover was concerned.
That kind of shoots it all to hell about you were only 15 in 1985.
Oh, shoot, yeah. Yeah, okay, you're right. That kind of blew all that.
You have to remember these dates, Larry.
I'll better get a chalkboard because that's the only way I think I'm going to remember them.
And ever since then, it's been...
It has. I started writing, and as I said, wrote for a lot of different publications. Served on staff with everything from like Peterson's Hunting to Deer and Deer Hunting to Sporting Classics to a lot of different other publications. We sold a bunch of articles, wrote some books and all those kind of things. And during the years of beginning of TV, I saw money being siphoned from magazines, from print publications, and kind of pushed toward the visual side of TV. So I could see that happening. So that was when I started making somewhat of a transition to TV and videos and all those kind of things. But also at the same time, always keeping a hand in the writing side of it, because to me it's part of a complete package. To me, there's writing, there's TV, there's digital TV, there's podcasts, there's speaking, there's radio, and over the years, I've kind of been able to kind of change when I needed to, but also knowing that you retain and stay in some of those fields, but try to diversify and be in as many different places as you can as possible.
That's not always the easiest thing to do.
It's not easy.
So, especially probably in the last 10 years, things have changed really quickly.
And things continually change all the time. And with that said, you talk about chronological years or my age, and I'm very fortunate I'm one of these people that gets by really well with 4 hours of sleep a night. And if it weren't for that fact, I wouldn't be able to do anywhere near what I do because of the different things that I'm involved in. Because nobody has, unless they've been there, has an understanding the number of hours it takes and the time it takes being away from your family and being away from home and all those other kind of good things.
Yeah, but if you love what you're doing, it's...
Oh, gosh. I'm one of those people who cannot wait to get up in the morning to go to work. And to me, sleep is a total waste of time. And if I could figure out how not to sleep, I wouldn't.
Get on more planes. Actually, that's one of my great skills. I can travel anywhere in the world. I get on a plane, I fall sound asleep, and I could be in Africa, and I'll wake up tomorrow at the same time I wake up in Texas. And I feel refreshed and I'm right on the same time clock.
That is a blessing.
Yeah, it really is. Speaking of traveling around the world, you've traveled all over the place. What are some of the top destinations?
To me, I've loved every place that I've been. There's
Come on,
something,
that's a cheap way.
It is a cheap way. It really is. But to me, my favorite place, the next place I'm going to, whatever there is, because I find that because I love dealing with people and I love the wildlife side of things, whether it's from the hunting aspect or for just the viewing side of things, and then the habitat and trying to learn as much as I can about the individual culture. So every place that I've ever been, including a place that I was with you in Kyrgyzstan,
yep.
In retrospect or looking back now was fun. Now at the time we were there, it was pretty darn questionable. So
no, Larry, it was not pretty questionable. It was the worst hunt that you and Fallon and I have ever been on anywhere in our life. Because I said this a couple of days ago, it was honestly it was a freaking terrible hunt.
It was
right from the time we first got there.
It was until
the time we left, and a few days later it was like, I was with some pretty good friends there.
that was the highlight right there is the people that we were with, and we were in some interesting country. Interesting both in air quotes and real quotations.
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating.
But seriously, you're right. I've been very fortunate. I love hunting in parts of Europe because I truly appreciate the respect that is shown the animal and the respect that's shown the act of hunting and the people that you're with there. And Africa is out of this world good. North America is out of this world good. Australia, New Zealand, South America.
Well, you can't get into Australia and New Zealand now. So
no, but I was able to, thankfully. So
Well, and it's interesting that you say, Europe. I think Europe is really, it's gentleman's hunting at its finest. If you go hunting in Spain or you go in Spain, the reality is that they're not going to take you out at 5 o'clock in the morning because they have to stop and get the baguettes and they stop and get the cheese
and there are roads that can take you to the
exactly.
top. And as I've gotten older, I think I appreciate that aspect a little bit more than what I might have earlier in my career.
Look, I'm glad that we were not Kyrgyzstan today because my knees are so bad now. I think I would have, because we spent a lot of time on and off horseback because the horses that we had were not great. But I don't think I could walk up there.
No. If you asked me, would you like to go back? And the answer is probably no.
Look, I agree with you because I think you look at it and say, at least I do, and say, look, I've got limited amount of time. What do I want to do with that time? And do I want to go here or here? I'm not sure that I'd go back. Who knows?
Well, that's kind of, I learned a long time ago, you never say never.
No, exactly.
You always find, and you never, particularly when it comes to hunting or wildlife, you never make a definite statement. It is this way. It can be said in most instances, occasionally. There's always that qualifier before or after that statement so that it's not set in concrete.
Yeah, exactly. What about species? Any favorite species?
Of course, I grew up around whitetail deer, and I love hunting whitetail deer, and I've hunted them all over North America, and hopefully will continue to be able to do so. And I've hunted a lot of the African species from elephant on down. Never did anything with rhinos, although I was around them, but that was only one of the big 5 that I have not taken and really have no real desire to at this stage of my career. I love hunting roe deer in Europe because of maybe it's a European connection from many eons of ancestors ago kind of thing.
As you might recall, when we were in Kyrgyzstan, I had a lovely roe deer.
Yeah,
almost in my sights until the guide decided he'd start shooting with his AK-47.
And the range was a little bit farther, I think, at what that rifle was capable of, even if he took a huge arc to try to get it to there. But to me, the roe deer, they're fun. Here in North America, I've hunted sheep a little bit. I'm taking desert bighorn. I love hunting mule deer. there's just something special to me about mule deer, particularly those bigger, older, mature bucks who are very much like a really wily white-tailed deer. I mean, they're not easy to come by in terms of numbers. There are not very many of them, even where there are lots of them. But there's something truly majestic about them. If you get a big old mule deer that's approaching that 30-inch spread, and he's got long back tines and splits and long front tines with a lot of mass, and when he turns his head, he doesn't turn his head. It's one of those Chuck Norris things where the earth underneath him revolves, kind of thing.
Where do you find them? Where are the most prolific white mule deer?
The biggest mule deer, there's some really good mule deer in parts of Canada, of course, in Alberta, and maybe on some of the plains in Saskatchewan. Antler-wise, the Kaibab and the Strip in Arizona, which historically produced really big antlers, they're still there. There are pockets of Colorado and New Mexico that are the same way, where they're more intensively managed now in terms of allowing those animals to get in those older age classes. Then also there's some really good mule deer down in the crook-eye subspecies, or the desert species, down in Sonora, Mexico. And here in Texas, with the management programs we're doing and getting these bucks into older age classes in the presence of good nutrition, we're producing some outstanding bucks here in Texas as well.
I've never hunted mule deer. Actually, I have to be honest. I've never hunted whitetail either.
Really?
Never have. I hunt primarily for meat. That's
Right.
what I hunt for. My meat favorites are axis.
Of course.
And if I get a chance to shoot an axis versus a whitetail, I'm going to pick the axis. I've never really eaten whitetail, so I wasn't thrilled with it, but I'm not, who knows why. It could be that where it was, et cetera, was from New York. So
that
might be a whole different thing.
A whole lot of things.
It very well could.
A lot of times the meat is somewhat tainted or flavored by what they're eating. And to me, in recent years, some of the whitetail venison that I've eaten across North America, because now they have plenty to eat and they're not forced to eat like maybe white cedar or something that is going to maybe add a little bit of a flavoring to something up there. But across the board, the whitetail venison that we've had, both from bucks and does scattered across North America, has just been outstanding lately. Very, very close to axis deer. Not axis deer yet, but close kind of thing.
Well, I guess I probably should do it fairly soon.
We'll need to get you in. You're creating a challenge here for me, as far as I'm concerned, to get you in on a whitetail hunt and a mule deer hunt. And I happen to know where there's a gentleman hunt for mule deer as well, too.
There was a methodology behind my questions,
Well, it worked.
What about rifles and calibers? Any favorites? Anything you really, if you had one only, tell me about those.
We're fortunate in that we don't have to choose just one rifle or one caliber here in the States. But one of my all-time favorites is a .280 Remington. Quite frankly, I hunted with one for years ago in the process. That was kind of my go-to rifle in a Remington Model 700 mountain rifle. And I love that caliber. I've used it on most everything in North America, with the exception of some moose and things like that. But I am back to where I'm here for most of the things that I'm going to hunt in North America from here on out. That .280 Remington with the Hornady ELDX ammunition and 150 grain bullet. I don't think you can beat it for what my hunting is. I'm not trying to take. I love shooting long range, but when it comes to hunting, I want to crawl as close in as I can, kind of thing. So for the most part, if you ask me a favorite caliber right now for North America, it'll be that .280 Remington. If I'm going to Africa or some of the other places, and I've used a .375 Ruger there on everything from elephants down to blue diker that are about the size of a cottontail, that would probably be if I had to choose one gun, one caliber, that would probably be the one that I would choose, because now that .375 Ruger, which is really kind of designed by Hornady, their ammunition is available pretty much worldwide. Prior to that, I always carried a .375 H&H just in case they didn't have, as a second gun kind of thing. But to me, that 375 Ruger is worthy to be used on everything from elephants down, like I said, to dikers. And I've used it in roe deer, and I've used it on ibex, and I've used it on whitetail deer, and a whole lot of things in between.
Yeah, when I got serious about hunting again, I really don't want to carry a bunch of different guns.
Right.
And I said, what do I really want? So I have a 7mm Rem mag.
Absolutely.
You know, to me, I can shoot that for just about everything in North America,
You can.
including bear.
Oh, absolutely.
And then Africa's a different story, you know.
It
It's
is.
a dangerous game.
Yeah, and actually, I love some of the older rounds, like the old 450, the 450, 400 NE 3-inch, and some of the older calibers, even though 405 Winchester and some of those others, to me, are absolutely fantastic. But again, to me, in North American, at 280 Remington, with the load that I'm using from Hornady, there's not a whole lot of difference between it and the 7mm Remington mag.
No, actually, the 7 Rem mag has really I think has had a really nice return from,
It has.
because I think it dropped off with the 300 Win mag, but I see it coming back more and more and more now.
Well, there's something to me about that 7mm 284 caliber anyway.
Right.
I mean, I've used them going back a long time ago, from particularly with the 7x57 Mauser, if you will, and those to me were always extremely accurate and extremely killing. And I know Tim Fallon always says the FTW, you take the animal, or you're supposed to take the animal with that first shot, and that was one of the things I've always liked about the 7mm that I've shot. Almost every time that animal went down with that first shot.
Yeah, I told you about my 345 bull.
Yes.
It was just pure dumb luck, actually, that we came across him. We were going to another spot, came down the road. We were going to go to the top of a mountain, do some spot and stalk. Came down the road, and there's a herd 380 yards away. We got, parked the truck, got out, crawled to 340 yards, and from 340 yards, the wind was right, everything was perfect, and the bull didn't move 2 feet.
Yeah.
Just stood there, and the rest of them, because I use a suppressor, which I quite enjoy, the rest of the herd
Yes.
just stood around until this bull fell, and then they went,
Oh,
what
wait.
the hell?
What
Something's
happened-
going on.
What happened here? Yeah.
I guess we should run. So what kind of improvements might you like to see in the industry?
Oh, my
Or
gracious.
what have you seen?
Well, I've seen the industry come from a long way, quite frankly, from magazines almost being the king to almost hardly being non-existent anymore in hardcover, with the exception of a few. I've seen great numbers of advances made as far as ammunition and rounds are concerned. In terms of optics, we've seen optics go from the old original 4K Weaver kind of thing to all kinds of variables to now where you push a button. And to me, one of the things that we've done over the last several years as far as the advancement in the outdoors, we've taken what people used to have between their left ear and their right ear and put it at their fingertip. To where years ago you had to learn how to estimate the distance and be fairly close. Now we punch a button and it tells us the exact thing. And
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
it's both. It's both as far as I'm concerned. The good thing is it probably there's some people that now are much better shots because of it. We're losing probably fewer animals due to wounding type of thing. From the negative side of it is, I think they've lost this woodsmanship that, to me, has always been very, very important to me, and that's more of a personal thing than from a perspective on the industry kind of thing. But so I think the technology we have these days is both good and bad.
Yeah, I think that I don't disagree with that. I think I'm more of the opinion that the more accurately people will shoot, understanding people never in history would take an extraordinary amount of time to learn how to do something.
No.
People
No.
don't want to practice. They don't want
No.
to become really
No.
proficient. they want it, they'll do as little as they can to become what they think is proficient. So if we can add something from an industry standpoint that allows them to kill more cleanly, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, that's not a bad thing.
Unfortunately, maybe what it's done as well, though, is it's allowed those same people, not those same people, but it's also allowed people to try a kill shot at 1,000 yards.
Right.
And I think I shoot pretty well. I know you shoot pretty well. I wouldn't take a shot at 1,000 yards for anything I can think of. Yeah.
Love doing it at steel.
I love doing it at steel,
but there's no negative effect if I miss.
Exactly.
Kind of thing, or if I don't precisely.
Look, I can hit the center of steel out to 600 or 700 yards pretty regularly.
Yes, sir.
Beyond that, I'm hitting in some. If I'm hitting the steel, it's within 12 or 15 inches.
Right.
That's not a kill zone.
No.
But people are doing it.
People are doing it. To me, they missed that challenge as far as their challenge, it seems to be in being able to hold the rifle still long enough to make the shot. My challenge comes in trying to see how close I can get, and to me, it's more of a one-on-one situation with that animal, is it compared to where I try to shoot 750 to 1,000 yards.
Yeah, look, it's fun shooting steel out to 1,000 yards. There's no question about it. But shooting an animal, I'm the same.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to get in, but I also, because I'm a meat hunter, I want to make sure I get it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't
like. What's that distance?
I want to share whatever venison I collect with friends, not with
exactly
coyotes or rabbit or whatever, skunks or whatever else is out there.
We've all missed.
Oh yeah,
we remember one that you and I were on.
Yes, I can close my eyes and see exactly what happened on
Me
that.
too. That was an interesting hunt. It was the worst one any of us have been on. But
it was, yes, sir.
So speaking about that, it's kind of to end this, to finish up. How can we as hunters and sportsmen and women help keep the shooting and hunting traditions alive? It's really interesting, because I've told people time after time that I use that hunt as a great example. I actually use a couple of things. That hunt is one. It was a shitty hunt. It was just nothing good about it.
Yeah, well, that's being very kind to it.
Yeah, that is being very kind. There was nothing about it that was good. But even after food poisoning and all of that kind of cool things, it wasn't too many days later that I was thinking, it wasn't really that bad.
Yeah, it wasn't really that bad. Yeah. Now I kind of look back at it.
And it was really because we had three friends, and we kind of looked out for each other. And I remember
yes, we did. And I remember some individual I'm sitting next to that got on a high point so he could cover the rest of us, by golly, just in case.
So it was an interesting thing, but I think that plays a big part. The other thing is, my son is not hasn't been a hunter his entire life. Started hunting not too many years ago, and I was traveling one time, and he asked my wife, whom you met, if he thought Dad would take him hunting to FTW.
Right.
So she said, yeah, for sure he would. I remember her telling me about it and said, you know what? He talks about it all the time. It wasn't so much the hunting or the shooting that he really wanted. It was kind of get to spend a little bit of time with the old man. And I think that one of the big things this is my opinion, I've asked for years, but I'm giving you mine ahead of time.
I want to hear yours too, yes, sir.
I think that not to forget the importance of friends and family doing something like that together. I think that's tremendous. And I think as long as we do that, because where else do you go that you get to spend 4, 5, 10 days with some good friends in an environment that is great? I think that's a big deal.
You can't do it in an office. You can't do it even on a golf course. But I totally agree. And to me, my fondest memories of hunting are with dear friends, but also family, of having my daughters sitting literally on my knee when they shot their first animal. Same thing with my 4 grandsons and my granddaughter. And I have a great-grandson who is about 3 months old at this stage, and I can't wait for him. I'm wishing my life away to get him to that 6, 7 years of age, and at that, hoping to have the opportunity to have him sit on my knee when he takes his first animal. I think what we can do is to belong to worthwhile organizations who share mutual goals, such as DSC with conservation education and hunter advocacy, and like the Mule Deer Foundation, the Elk Foundation. There's several others in Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, and support them financially as best we can, beyond buying hunting equipment, beyond buying more Remington rifles, because there's an excise tax that's going to come back to us, buying hunting licenses. And then I think beyond that is to give people the opportunity to get into the field. And we hear so much about, we got to educate the youth, we got to educate the youth. And there's several programs out there these days that will take adults hunting. And to me, if you can get mom and dad who are in their 30s, late 20s, or maybe early 40s, get them out to hunt, and they realize how much fun this is and how really good that meat is that they collected. And so very often we think in terms of hunting of big game. We forget that rabbits and squirrels and those kind of things, waterfowl, doves, all those are absolutely fantastic to eat, and they're a great amount of fun, and it gives people greater opportunity to get out with their friends and with their families. And I think that is once we need to get the kids involved, don't get me wrong, but we also need to get mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle.
Mom and dad do get the kids involved.
Yes, they will get the kids involved. And so, I grew up in a very hunting family to where, fishing family where, I didn't know any better. That's what we did, kind of thing. So, but it created a love within me for everything that I've been able to do since then and what I did back then. But I think it's very important that we give people opportunities. Now, even in a society of eons ago, not everybody was a hunter. There were people who were much more proficient at hunting and gathering than the others, but that entire community benefited from it. And I think that's kind of one of the things that if we can get more people out, adults, what are they going to do? They're going to come, they're going to kill a deer or whatever, or rabbits or whatever, catch fish. They're going to invite friends over and go, my God, I thought wild game was worthless. I thought, why would somebody want to shoot? Well, my God, now they're finding out it's not only was it a fun experience for the family and friends, but it is a fun experience to share the bounty of what you took as well, too.
All right, there's something really special about eating the meat that you harvested
yourself. Absolutely. And this locavore movement that we're seeing where people trying to, I think that has really been of great benefit because it's opened a lot of people's eyes in terms of, I want to collect my own food. The fact that a lot of the meat industry has used chemicals and things like that, whether they have or not, it's immaterial in a way, because it's that perception that people think, they're eating that meat. Oh, they put it full of all kinds of antibiotics and all that kind of. I'm going to go. I want real food. So that's been kind of a help in a way too, whether there's any truth to it or not.
I've got a whole freezer of real food, and I'm going to get a pronghorn beginning of October, and then another elk later on, and then my friend Larry is going to, talk to me about whitetail and mule deer.
And I will do so.
Larry, it's been a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate your time.
It is always a pleasure spending time with you, and it's a great honor to be on your podcast, sir.
Actually, there's one more thing that I just thought of, because you mentioned it earlier. One of the things that we talked about a little bit, I wonder if people realize, because we talked about calibers, we talked about guns, we talked about the change in ammunition over the years. Those with guns that are 20 plus years old, they're shooting a whole different ammunition today than they did then. Twist rate of the gun has changed substantially. The ammunition does not work well. I'm saying this because I want people to go buy some new guns.
No, you're exactly right, because a lot of, like the 30-06, 270, some of those standard 300 Win Mag, in a lot of instances now we're shooting a heavier bullet.
Yep.
And we're finding that in the proper
And a
twist
faster
rate.
bullet.
And a faster bullet. And so, in a much, particularly in terms of the powder. So you're right. You know, to me, if you're shooting a rifle that's, 30 years old or older, you better go back and keep shooting Remington core lock, because that's what it was developed for, and around. Whereas all the new ammunition that's out there now is designed for a much faster twist rate. It's not going to shoot as accurately in these older guns as what it will in the newer guns. So you're exactly right. That's a good point. Absolutely great point.
I just thought of that. I was going to mention it earlier. Anyway, thanks for coming, Larry. Appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me to be with you.
Okay, that was fun. Enjoyed it, Larry.
I did too.